12 Realms. This is a fantasy game, it is a co-op game, it is also playable in solitaire. It is set in a fantasy world inhabited by characters from folklore such as Red Riding Hood or Robin Hood, Snow White, characters from fairy tales, monsters of various type. Each player represents one of the good characters. For example, in this case, I just set up a 2-player game with Red Riding Hood and the Nutcracker. Or I should say a 2-character game. Once you have 2 characters, then you can play it also solitaire. It really is the number of characters that matters. But I have a 2-character game, and these characters will move on those boards that you see there. Those boards will be soon filled with monsters, and they need to defeat the monsters and to try then to eliminate the final boss. If you eliminate the final boss, then you win the game. Or you have to eliminate all the final bosses in a game, and there is a final boss per board, per realm. Otherwise, if one of the final bosses gets to the end of the turn track, then you lose the game. There are 4 boards, and you can play with any number of boards, any number of realms between 1 and 4. Usually, up to 4 players, it's suggested that you play with a realm per player, but things can be adjusted. Now, each character is represented by a little board, such as this one, with the stats of the character and little pretty much cryptic symbols that are supposed, I guess, to remind you of the things that you can do, but these things are really hard to understand. The visual aids in this game are not very helpful, really. It takes more time to figure out what those symbols mean than just to learn the rules from the rulebook and memorize that. What's important is that each character has a set of starting talent tokens. For example, Red Riding Hood has 4 tokens for movements, and those are indicated by wings. Then she has a little book, a sword, and a heart. That makes her a pretty much well-balanced character with a lot of different abilities. The Nutcracker is a little more specialized, has 3 movement, 2 swords, and a star, and also has another special ability here. There are abilities indeed that are described, that may be described on the board of the character. The character has such abilities. Then each character is also represented by a miniature. This version of the game that you see, I backed it on Kickstarter some time ago. It came pre-painted from the publisher, and I'm really happy with my purchase, especially in that regard, because the miniatures are indeed very good looking. They are painted not super mega professionally, like this wouldn't maybe win a contest, but they look good to me. They really look nice enough for me to be happy with my purchase, especially considering that I do not paint miniatures and it would have cost me a lot of extra money to have somebody paint these miniatures for me. The game really looks nice. The graphic, like the art and the miniatures, that is outstanding. I think is the best part of the game. Back to us. Each character is represented by a painted miniature that goes on the board of one of the realms, and each realm is divided in 6 areas plus a town area, which is where the characters start at the beginning of the game. Each area is numbered from 1 to 6, and there is a number that you roll, a 6-sided die, to determine the placement of random elements on the board. At the beginning of the game, on the board, you also have a token such as this one. This is an artifact. There are also 2 tokens that represent treasures. These can be converted into gold coins once you get the treasure. And, well, soon you will have monsters on the board. Let me show you how this works. A turn starts with the board doing bad stuff to you. First, you update the invasion track, which is this one. You move this token here. In this version of the game, it is represented by a miniature of the boss. You move that token by as many spaces to the right as there are invaders on the board. The character should start from before space number 1. If I have 3 monsters sitting on the board in this phase, for example, then I move the character by 3. That simple. When the token gets to the red area, then the final boss enters the game. There is a token that represents the boss with the abilities of the boss that is randomly placed on the board. If you defeat the boss before the boss reaches space 20, then good for you, because you have protected effectively that realm. So first you update the invasion track, then there may be creatures with ongoing effects, and those are resolved at that point. Then you draw realm cards. Each of these realms comes with a set of cards. I'm using the green realm and the pink realm, so I have the green and the pink cards. You shuffle them together, and then you draw a number of cards which is equal to 2 cards per realm in play plus 1. I have 2 realms. 2 and 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. I draw 5 cards, and then I simply resolve them. That simple. To resolve cards, well, you may have cards that represent monsters. In that case, you place those monsters on the board. Say I have here a sprite, then I take the corresponding token for this monster from the counter mix. This is a green card, so it will appear on the green realm. I roll a d6, suppose I rolled a 4, then I place the sprite right there. That's simple. So you simply place the new monsters that come to the board, and also they may be treasures, such as this one, that is on the pink board. Same thing, I roll the dice, suppose I rolled 3. There it is. Pretty simple, huh? Then players, once the new elements have been placed, players get to react, get to spend their actions. As you can imagine, the point is to go around the board to eliminate those monsters, to remove as many monsters as possible, so that you can slow down the invasion. You also need to collect all 3 artifacts. There's only 1 on the board at the beginning of the game, but there are 3 total artifacts associated with each realm, so you have to wait for those to come out. When you have all 3 artifacts, then you will be able to fight against the boss when the boss shows up. It is not granted that you will win, but at least you get a chance of fighting. You need the 3 artifacts. So early in the game, you need to clean up the board, keeping the invasion at bay to slow it down as much as possible, so you have time to collect all the artifacts and gain golds that will allow you to gain extra skills. How do you do things in this game? Well, to do things in this game, I sound very technical, right? To do stuff in this game, you spend talent tokens. When you use one to perform the action associated with the token, you simply remove it from the board, you place it there, just to make sure that you know you spent that one. To move on the board, if you spend a wing, you can move to an adjacent area. 1 area per wing. Other things that you can do, you can go to the village where you will spend a wing, and by doing that, well, 1 wing to move there and 1 wing to actually start buying stuff, trading stuff, to look around the market, because here you have village cards that will grant you benefits. When you spend a wing to flip cards from the village deck, you flip 2, you look at them, you can keep 1, you discard the other one, but the one that you keep, actually, I should say, you have a chance of purchasing 1. You choose the one you're interested in, you pay the necessary amount of money, if you have it, and you can keep the card. In this case, for example, the sensei gives me a random talent. I roll this die here, which is used to determine random talents. Suppose that I rolled a star. Then I place a star token on the sensei card. Now I own that card, that means that I can also use that token. Giving you tokens, giving you abilities to destroy monsters fast is one of the things that the village cards can do. So I can go to the village, purchase stuff, or very important, I can defeat monsters and or claim stuff from the board. All tokens on the board pretty much have little symbols that correspond to talents. For example, this one has a book. If I have a talent token with a book and I haven't spent it yet, then I simply spend it to claim this token. In this case, I claim the treasure, I convert it into a gold, which I place in my reserve, and I'm happy with that. This artifact here, to collect it, I will need a wing. So I move the space where this is, I still have a wing, I spend it, I claim this artifact, and I place it on my character board. The same applies for the monsters. If you're fighting the monsters, this is how it works. The monsters have symbols that you use to attack them. Here are some examples. If the monsters have symbols in separate areas of the corner, that means or. That is, to eliminate this monster here, I need either a book or a sword or a star. To eliminate this monster, a heart or a sword or a coin. You announce the monster that you are attacking, you spend the corresponding talent, and you eliminate the monster. I have a heart and a sword, I decide to spend both in the area with these two monsters. They are gone. If you don't eliminate them, nothing happens. The monsters here don't really attack you, they just sit there and pollute your land. When the icons on the enemies are in the same corner, in the same area, so as you can see there's a little box there, that means and. That means to defeat the ninja I need both a wing and a sword. And, well, that's pretty much it really. That's how it works. You spend your tokens, at the end of the turn your talents are refreshed, so you put them back in the area that indicates the token that you have available. There are special tokens that can be used multiple times in a turn, that is good. And then a lot of things, a lot of effects come from special abilities that the monsters have. There are monsters with abilities, well, with vulnerability, that is icons that you need to match to defeat the monster. Those vulnerability icons are random, you determine them randomly. Monsters that come in group, monsters that summon other monsters, a lot of different abilities. A lot of different abilities also are the ones granted by these cards. And then the game has a lot of variants, a lot of things that you can add. I believe that some of these variants at least were originally intended as expansions. You need to purchase them separately. They did come with my version of the game. Those 4 buildings that you see there, those are fortresses. If you add them to the board, you decide to play the variant with the fortress, then the fortress is added to a realm when the invasion marker goes to the space number 7, and the fortress is something that protects the enemies and you need to destroy the fortress. So extra expenditure of tokens, because you need to spend either 3 stars or 3 swords to eliminate a fortress. You also have other buildings there, the bazaar, the inn, and the stable, and bazaar, stable respectively. You can choose to add them to a realm, 1 per realm, and those come with specific extra cards that you can purchase. These are the cards that I could purchase at the stable, the ones at the inn, usually people that I recruit, and stuff that I can purchase at the bazaar. More symbols that you have to learn pretty much, but some of these cards are really useful. Cards that allow you to refresh talent tokens, stuff that you can use in multiple turns, or stuff associated with this icon. That means that's a one-time benefit. You need to discard the card to use the associated effect. There's effect here. If you discard this card, then you can refresh all of your tokens. Something also that you can do that I didn't mention, you can travel from realm to realm. That is, you can travel from board to board. You need to be in the village. You pop up in the village of another realm, but when you do that, your turn is over. That has to be the last action of your turn. The bosses, they are, as you can imagine, tough to eliminate. They come associated with a token that indicates the position of the boss on the board, a nice card indicating the stats and the abilities of the boss. In my version, again, also a painted miniature that you can use to record the level of invasion. Very simple, very straightforward. You manage to eliminate all of the bosses in the game, you win the game, the boss arrives to the last space on the track of a realm, you lose the game. The components are all incredibly attractive. I really like them aesthetically. I like the graphics. They are Japanese-inspired, manga anime type of thing. Joan d'Arc, the cartoon Joan d'Arc looks like someone out of an episode of the Sailor Moon cartoon. Maybe this is not everybody's cup of tea, but I find that there is a bit of irony there, and the overall result is really beautiful. I like the colors, just stunning art. I like the miniatures. I'm glad that they got them painted for really not much extra money. That is great. From the point of view of the components, there is one component which, however, is sorely lacking, which is the manual. For such a simple game, there's really no excuse for a manual that is not complete or clear, and this unfortunately is a problem that I've had with the manual. There are contradictions, terminology is vague, sentences are poorly phrased here and there. Sometimes the word area is used to identify a realm, like a full board, sometimes a single area on the board. Things like that can get irritating. You have to start playing the game and you have to figure things out for yourself. Also, there are not enough explanations for what the symbols represent, what the symbols do. Some of those symbols I still have no idea what they mean. When I found one of these cards, for example, if it's a village card, I simply discard it and I draw another one instead. For most things, I've been able to figure it out. I went on Board Game Geek and I found other explanations, but then I thought, you know what, I shouldn't be doing this. This is a super light game. So this is something that bottom a little bit. It probably will be corrected in the future. For all I know, maybe there is already a living rule manual out there. But I play with what came out of the box. To me, that's important to give me a sense of what is it that the maker of the game sold. To me, this is what the maker sold. This is the impression I have from that manual, and I have to say, negative impression. The game is super light. This is co-op game 101. It doesn't get any more straightforward than this. Monsters come to the board. Once they come to the board, you do not even have to manage them to do things. They don't move. Only some of them have actions that are ongoing. For most of the time, the monsters sit there, and simply by sitting there, they create negative effects for you because they move the marker on the invader's track. Incredibly simple. When it is your turn, you spend your actions, you have a physical reminder in the tokens of what your actions are, which ones you still have. You buy cards, you buy artifacts that grant you bonuses. If you think about this, this is really Defenders of the Realm light. If you take games that are much more complex and you strip them of 90% of what they are, I'm talking about cooperative games, this is the basic idea. Monsters come out of a random deck, you spend actions, some of those actions eliminate the monsters, some of those actions buy you bonuses. It doesn't get any easier than this. Is this a good thing or is it a bad thing? Neither and both, I guess. If you only play Arkham Horror and you find that a little too easy for you, a little too light, then this is not a game for you. On the other hand, there are advantages in games that are this simple. For example, this is a game that definitely I could play with non-gamers. I often have gaming events at Indiana University with non-gamers, events that are meant precisely to introduce non-gamers to the beauty of gaming. And I can't introduce them to Arkham Horror as the first game that they played after Monopoly that they played when they were 12. This could be a good intro, a good step into the real gaming, games that go towards what gaming is really about. This is a game that is suitable for young gamers, definitely a family co-op game. People don't die, there's no slaughtering, monsters don't attack you, you attack them, but there are ways of defeating them. There is even a little bit of narrative in the rulebook that says, oh, by spending gold you bribe them, or by spending little hearts, I think you're like charming to them, you convince them to leave. It's something like that. In any case, the graphics and the theme is such that you can reinvent non-violent ways of seeing the story, and you could play with a young child, even if you're afraid of exposing your young child to violent themes or controversial themes. This is not something that happens or has to happen with this game. This is, I believe, a game that I will indeed play with my daughters in not many years from now. This is probably the game that I will use to introduce my daughters to the idea of cooperative gaming. I believe that these attractive, colorful components also will be a big advantage in attracting young gamers and keeping their attention going as they see the monsters coming out and they can move the little toy figures. I think there are advantages in this. Not for everyone, not for everybody, but for a light game, a really light, basic co-op game, this is one that works, with the exception of the manual, which is really poorly done. Everything is pretty solid, the mechanics work, the interaction between what you do and what happens on the board, what I mean is the resources that you have and the actions, that is interesting. You have enough decisions there to keep things interesting. The boards work in different way. There isn't much interaction between players. Very often you will have a character per board, but characters may interact if that happens to be necessary. So, a lot of good things for a light game. Not for everybody, not for everyone, but for a family co-op game, I believe that this is one that works.